Welcome back to the deep dive. Ever think about what it was actually like to live in ancient India, like back in the Mauryan Empire?
Oh, absolutely. It's a fascinating period.
So today we're going back in time, about 322 to 185 BCE.
No time machine needed.
Nope.
Yeah.
And get this, we're using these two kind of interesting sources, snippets from our deep dives on the Vedas, those ancient Indian texts,
Right.
and the Mahajanapadas, kingdoms that came before the Mauryas.
Sort of a foundation.
Yeah. It's like we're putting together a historical puzzle, but, with less cardboard dust.
Definitely less cardboard dust. It's a fascinating period. Really, you see this shift from these smaller societies scattered around
Yeah.
to these larger, more organized kingdoms. It eventually becomes the Mauryan Empire.
Hmm.
Just imagine all the changes, the growing pains, the innovation. It was a dynamic time.
So before the Mauryas were running the show, there were these Mahajanapadas.
Exactly.
And they were kind of like the warm-up act, right? They were
Yeah.
figuring out how to manage these larger territories, collect taxes, even making laws. Sounds familiar, huh?
It does, doesn't it? Every government seems to go through that. And it wasn't just practical things. These kingdoms were heavily influenced by the Vedas, those ancient texts.
Right.
It shaped their whole worldview, their social structures. Imagine these texts as being like the operating system for life itself.
Okay.
Everything from social roles to political ideologies influenced by them.
Okay, so then these two big Vedic concepts, dharma and karma, these weren't just abstract ideas, right?
No, absolutely not. They had real consequences.
Like how?
Imagine living back then. You believe your current life is just one in a never-ending cycle of reincarnation. And every action, every single choice you make directly affects your next life, for better or for worse.
That's some serious motivation to get things right.
Oh, absolutely. To act in accordance with your dharma, like your cosmic job description.
So it's like having a built-in moral compass and a cosmic scorecard all at the same time.
Exactly.
No pressure.
Yeah.
But how did this actually play out in daily life? I mean, give us an example.
Let's say you're a warrior. Your dharma is to protect people, uphold justice, be courageous in battle. Now imagine you're tempted to run away from a difficult fight. Knowing that doing that cowardly act could lead to a pretty bad rebirth,
Yeah.
maybe even being reincarnated as, I don't know, a dung beetle. Makes you think twice, right?
Sun beetle is definitely not on my reincarnation wish list. So this belief system had a huge influence, right? From influencing personal choices to justifying these social hierarchies and even political power.
Precisely. If a king was seen as upholding dharma, his rule was legit. And if you were born into a certain caste, your dharma was set. It was the framework for society, for better or worse.
But this is also a time when new religions like Jainism and Buddhism are popping up, right?
Yeah.
They challenge this whole system, especially that rigid caste system.
They did, absolutely. They offered these different paths to spiritual liberation, and they questioned that whole idea that your birth determined your worth or your spiritual potential.
Yep.
It was a huge shakeup, a challenge to the entire power structure. Imagine the arguments, the clashes. It's a really important moment in Indian history.
So on the one hand, we've got these ancient traditions and beliefs that are shaping society, and on the other, these radical new ideas challenging everything.
Exactly. And that's the context in which the Mauryan Empire pops up. And it inherits this really fascinating mix of, continuity and change, of tradition and innovation. And that tension, that's what makes this period so interesting.
Okay, you've got me hooked.
Duh.
But let's zoom in a little bit. What was it actually like to live as like an everyday person under the Mauryas? What did they eat? Where did they live? Did they have like chariot races?
Chariot races, maybe. Netflix, probably not.
Mhm.
But they did have a very rich culture, music, dance, storytelling, festivals.
So no Netflix and chill, huh?
Not quite. As for food, they ate a lot of grains, lentils, vegetables, and fruits. Cattle were sacred, so beef was a big no-no.
A vegetarian-friendly empire, thousands of years before it was trendy.
Right.
What about clothing? Any ancient fashion icons we should know about?
I'm curious.
Think breezy cotton tunics for everyday wear. They were fantastic weavers, really beautiful textiles. Silk was around, but more of a luxury. It was a status symbol for special occasions or the elite. So in a way, not that different from today.
It's true.
Certain fabrics and styles still show wealth and status.
Interesting how that parallels across time. Okay, what about housing? Were they living in like sprawling mansions or something more modest?
Most people lived in villages and pretty simple homes made of mud brick or wood.
Okay.
Think functional over fancy. Cities, on the other hand, had more elaborate structures, palaces, temples, markets bustling with activity.
So you have this mix of simple village life and then this Busy city life.
Yeah.
Did people have much time for fun, or was it all work and, dharma?
Life wasn't all duty and toil. They loved their entertainment. Think vibrant festivals, religious gatherings, music, dance, and even early forms of games like chess and dice. So they knew how to have a good time. And this was all happening within this backdrop of a powerful empire.
Right,
Like
exactly. The Mauryan Empire, for all its complexities, it provided a stable and prosperous environment for a really diverse population. And its story, it's full of twists and turns, larger-than-life characters, and pivotal moments that really shaped the course of Indian history.
Well, you've definitely piqued my interest. Before we jump into the whole story of the Mauryan Empire, though, let's zoom out for a second and look at the global scene. Because what was happening in India wasn't happening in a vacuum. It was all part of something much larger.
Oh, absolutely. And that larger context helps us understand the significance of this period even more. But we'll dive into that right after. We'll just keep going.
No breaks. All right, let's do it.
So we were about to zoom out, look at the bigger picture, the global context of the Mauryan era. You see, while the Mahajanapadas were kind of laying the groundwork for the Mauryan Empire,
Yeah.
some pretty big things were happening in other parts of the world.
Okay, I'm listening. What's the connection?
Well, historians call this time the Axial Age.
Okay.
It was a period of huge intellectual and spiritual change all over the globe. While those Mahajanapadas were working things out in India, you had Socrates in Greece questioning everything, Zoroaster introducing new religious ideas in Persia,
Yeah.
and in China, you had Confucius and Lao Tzu shaping philosophical thought.
Wow, that's a lot going on at once. So even though these societies were far apart geographically, they were dealing with similar big questions.
Yeah.
Right? Like about life, morality, what it all means.
Exactly. It's fascinating, isn't it? It's like humanity was having this collective aha moment, questioning old assumptions and trying to figure out new ways of understanding the world and our place in it.
So the Mauryan Empire wasn't just this isolated thing. It was part of a bigger global trend, of intellectual and spiritual exploration. Makes you realize even ancient societies were connected in ways we don't always think about.
Right, exactly. History isn't just a bunch of separate events. It's like a tapestry woven from these interconnected threads.
I like that.
Ideas and movements that cross geographical borders.
That's a great segue back to the Mauryan Empire itself. How did this powerful empire actually happen? Who were the major players in all this?
Well, you remember those Mahajanapadas we were talking about?
I do.
They weren't exactly the best of friends. They were always fighting for power, making alliances, fighting wars for dominance. Imagine a real-life Game of Thrones,
Oh, I'm there.
but with chariots and war elephants.
I like it. Who emerged as the big contenders?
One of the major rivalries was between Magadha and Kosala.
Okay.
They were both really well positioned in these fertile Gangetic plains. They both had ambitious rulers who were not afraid to use their military might.
So a real clash of the titans. Who won?
After a really long and violent struggle, Magadha won. They conquered Kosala and changed the whole balance of power in northern India.
Wow.
This victory gave them a huge territory, setting the stage for their rise to empire status.
So Magadha was basically the precursor to the Mauryan Empire. How did that happen? Was it smooth or was it more dramatic?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Enter Chandragupta Maurya, a really shrewd, ambitious ruler who saw an opportunity. It was the late 4th century BCE, and the mighty Nanda dynasty, the dynasty that ruled Magadha, was getting weaker. And Chandragupta, along with his brilliant advisor, Chanakya, they took advantage of the situation.
So he was a real player, this Chandragupta. What was his strategy?
Chandragupta was an incredible strategist, a master of political maneuvering. He exploited the weaknesses of that dynasty, got support from unhappy groups, and finally he overthrew the king, establishing the Mauryan dynasty in its place. It was bold, audacious. It changed everything.
Talk about a power move. And this advisor, Chanakya, what was his role?
Chanakya was more than just an advisor. He was a political philosopher, a master strategist, and he really understood human nature. Think Machiavelli, but centuries earlier.
Wow.
He's credited with writing the Arthashastra. It's an ancient Indian treatise on running a state, economics, military strategy.
The Arthashastra, that sounds intense. What kind of advice did it give?
The Arthashastra is like a window into the political thinking of that time, the Mauryan era.
Okay.
It emphasizes being practical, being ruthless when necessary, and the importance of keeping order with rewards and punishments. It wasn't really a guide for ethical leadership, but wow, was it effective for getting power and building an empire?
The ends justify the means kind of approach. It sounds like Chandragupta and Chanakya were a real power couple.
Mhm.
The ambitious ruler and the brilliant strategist.
Right.
Did they expand the Mauryan Empire even more?
They sure did. The Mauryan Empire grew rapidly under their leadership, adding huge territories across northern and central India.
Wow.
Chandragupta even went up against the Seleucid Empire, one of the successor states to Alexander the Great's empire, which controlled parts of northwest India.
He challenged Alexander the Great's successors. That's impressive. How'd that clash of civilizations go?
It was a showdown for the history books. Chandragupta's armies went head-to-head with the Seleucid army in a series of battles. In the end, Chandragupta was victorious. He made Seleucus and Nicator give up territories in what's now Afghanistan and Pakistan.
That's huge.
It was a huge victory, solidified the Mauryan Empire as a major power in the region.
So he gained territory, showed his strength. What else happened because of this clash with the Seleucids?
Well, this might surprise you. Seleucus and Chandragupta actually formed a diplomatic alliance after fighting, sealed it with a marriage between Seleucus's daughter and Chandragupta.
Wow. From enemies to in-laws. That's a wild story.
Yeah.
What were the terms of this alliance, besides marriage?
Oh, it was more than just family ties. There was an exchange of gifts, including 500 war elephants,
Yeah.
which, by the way, Chandragupta used really effectively in later campaigns.
500 war elephants? That's
Yeah.
a pretty impressive gift.
Oh, absolutely. And the treaty also created diplomatic relations between the two empires, opened up communication and trade.
So Chandragupta got new territory, a powerful ally, and he even got some pretty cool new additions to his army, all through diplomacy and military skills. Amazing what he accomplished.
It is. Chandragupta's reign really set the foundation for what would become a golden age of peace and prosperity under his successors, Vijayanagara and, of course, the legendary Ashoka. But we'll get into their stories in a bit.
Ashoka, huh? Now that's a name that everyone knows. He's like the rock star of ancient Indian emperors. Did Ashoka inherit this empire-building, war-waging mentality from the rulers before him, or was he different?
That's a great question. And the answer is, well, it's complicated. Ashoka's story is one of dramatic change, from ruthless conqueror to a compassionate champion of peace and dharma.
Okay, now I'm really interested. Let's dive into Ashoka's world and see how he impacted the Mauryan Empire. Okay, so we've got Chandragupta, this super ambitious empire builder with his, like, Machiavelli-esque advisor, Chanakya.
Right.
They build this powerful empire, conquest, diplomacy, the whole deal. Then comes Bindusara, strengthening what his dad started. But it's his son, Ashoka, who really stands out. You mentioned a transformation. What happened there?
Well, Ashoka's early reign, it wasn't exactly peaceful. He had ambition, that's for sure. Even ruthless at times. There were power struggles, military campaigns.
So like father, like son.
In a way, yes, but then things changed. It's the Kalinga War that really marks the turning point.
Kalinga War.
Ashoka wanted to conquer Kalinga, this powerful kingdom on India's east coast. What followed was just brutal, a bloody conflict. And Ashoka's forces did win eventually, but
But at a cost, right? I mean, wars always have a cost.
absolutely. And for Ashoka, it was more than just the physical cost. It shook him to his core.
What was it about this specific war that had such a big impact on him?
We have these inscriptions, Ashoka's own words, and they describe the aftermath. The sheer scale of the death and destruction, it just devastated him. It said that the experience filled him with remorse, a deep, deep sorrow. It made him question everything he thought he knew about power, about conquest, about what dharma really meant.
So a real change of heart, not just a political strategy.
It really does seem that way. And the amazing thing is, Ashoka didn't just regret the war. He completely changed his approach to leadership. He rejected violence, embraced Buddhism. He was dedicated to those principles of nonviolence, compassion, tolerance.
That's a huge shift for an emperor. What did this new Ashoka actually do differently? How did he rule this massive, diverse empire?
Well, he shifted the focus. Instead of military might, it was all about moral authority, ethical behavior. He became this champion of social welfare. He was all about improving people's lives, hospitals for people and animals.
Wow.
He had trees planted along roads for shade, wells dug for clean water. He even sent missionaries out to spread the message of Buddhism.
That sounds more like a social worker than an emperor.
And he promoted religious tolerance. Remember, India at this time was really diverse religiously.
Right.
Ashoka's edicts, they encouraged harmony between faiths. He emphasized ethical behavior no matter what your religious beliefs were.
Pretty impressive for a ruler from over 2,000 years ago, advocating for peace, tolerance, social welfare. It's almost hard to believe. How did he get these ideas across to everyone? Was it just, like, decrees from his palace.
Ashoka was a master communicator. He literally put his message in stone. He issued these edicts inscribed on pillars and rocks. They were placed strategically all over the empire. Imagine these Ashoka pillars, as they're called, like these ancient billboards.
Ancient billboards, I like that.
Promoting his vision of dharma. They were along trade routes and public spaces. Everyone, no matter their walk of life, could see them, read them.
So these weren't just words carved in stone. He was trying to shape society itself.
Absolutely. And those pillars weren't just for spreading his ideas. They were also symbols of his power, reminders that their leader cared about them.
Okay, but running an empire is more than just moral pronouncements. How did Ashoka manage this vast, diverse territory practically?
Well, he didn't completely reinvent the wheel. He built on the systems his predecessors had put in place, streamlined the bureaucracy, improved communication. He even standardized weights and measures.
To make trade easier.
Exactly. It was this combination of practical measures with this focus on ethical governance.
So, idealist and pragmatist. Did it work? Was Ashoka as successful as his grandfather?
Most people consider Ashoka's reign a golden age for India. Peace, stability, economic prosperity, and of course he spread those Buddhist teachings far and wide. His influence goes way beyond the Mauryan Empire, shaping Indian thought and culture for centuries, even political ideals.
Golden ages don't last forever, though. Every empire, no matter how great, they eventually fall. What happened to the Mauryan Empire?
It was a mix of things, really. Internal struggles, succession disputes, conflicts, that all weakened the empire from the inside. It was expensive to maintain that big bureaucracy, the military, all of Ashoka's social programs. Maybe that strained their resources. And then, of course, there were threats from outside. Groups pushing at the borders, eventually contributing to the empire breaking apart.
The classic story, unfortunately. What if, though? What if Ashoka's successors had been able to keep his vision alive, the peace and dharma? Could the Mauryan Empire have lasted longer?
It's a question historians love to debate. We can't know for sure. But even though the Mauryan Empire did fall, its impact on India was huge. It really laid the groundwork for a unified Indian identity, both politically and culturally. It gave us those timeless edicts, those architectural wonders, the stupas and pillars. It's a legacy that still inspires us, intrigues us. It reminds us that even ancient empires can have lasting effects, ideas, innovations, achievements that go beyond just their time.
It's been amazing exploring this period of Indian history, from nomadic tribes to powerful empires, dynasties rising and falling, and all those incredible people who shaped events.
And remember, we've just scratched the surface. There's so much more to discover, to learn about ancient India and how it contributed to the world.
That's the best part about history, isn't it? There's always something new to find. So to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep those questions coming, keep diving into the past. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Mauryan Empire. Until next time, keep that curiosity going.